After becoming the wife of a wealthy man, I started noticing strange things about my husband. His cold stares, secret late-night calls, and my body growing weaker for no reason. And when I installed cameras on our anniversary. Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories. They're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret. Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. My name is Emma Collins. 3 years ago, I thought I'd stepped into a fairy tale. A poor orphan girl raised in the foster system, now living in a Beverly Hills mansion with a man the tabloids called the crown architect of California. My husband, Nathaniel Whitmore, wasn't just handsome. He was polished, powerful, and carried the kind of charm that disarmed even the most skeptical minds. On the outside, everything was perfect. And tonight it was supposed to be even more so. Our 3rd wedding anniversary. I had spent the whole day preparing. The house glowed in soft gold lights. The dining room shimmered with cut crystal and imported china. And in the kitchen, I stood over a marble island slicing heirloom tomatoes into perfect little crescent for a salad I'd carefully crafted. Dinner would be wild mushroom risotto and butter-based halibut in a citrus cream sauce. My own recipe. The wine was already chilled. Everything had to be just right. But then it happened again. The knife slipped from my fingers. A sharp twist of dizziness spun through my skull, sending my vision into a kaleidoscope of color and blur. I gripped the edge of the counter, nails digging into the cool marble. My breath came and stabbed, shallow, sharp, desperate. The room swirled like a carousel spinning out of control. I managed to lower myself into a chair and close my eyes, counting softly under my breath. 1, 2, 3, trying to still the panic rising in my chest. This wasn't the first time. The spells had started maybe 2 months ago, creeping into my days like shadows. At first, I thought it was stress, then maybe anemia, dehydration, hormones. I saw doctors. They ran blood work, EKG, even a full-body MRI. Nothing. Every test said I was perfectly healthy, fit, even. They called it sensitivity to barometric pressure, migraines, anxiety. None of it felt right. But what shook me more than the symptoms themselves was Nate's reaction. Instead of concern, he rolled his eyes. Another episode, he muttered the last time I almost fainted. At breakfast. Emma, I swear if it's not one thing, it's another with you. I can't even remember the last time you were normal. And don't even start about kids. Maybe if you weren't so damn fragile all the time. That's what he said, word for word. While I sat there, pale and shaking, trying to steady my fork so I could finish my eggs. I remember blinking at him, stunned. We'd been married for 3 years, and in that time, I had cooked every meal, hosted every party, smiled through every one of his mother's condescending comments. I had done everything to be the kind of wife he could proudly show off, but lately, it felt like he didn't want to show me off at all. He hadn't invited me to his last 3 business galleys. When I offered to bring him lunch at work, he told me not to disrupt the flow. And when I asked if we could spend a weekend away, just the 2 of us, he said he had meetings, always meetings. I began to feel like a ghost. In my own home, haunting a marble prison I once thought was a dream. And yet, tonight, I still wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe there was a spark left buried beneath his coldness and the sharpness of his words. I wanted to believe the man who once kissed my forehead and whispered, "You're the only real thing in my life," was still somewhere inside him. So, I pushed aside the dizziness, stood up slowly, and returned to my tomatoes. The knife was waiting. The risotto needed stirring. The fish was almost ready, and somewhere inside me, a voice, quiet but stubborn, said, "Just make it perfect. Maybe then he'll remember why he loved you." Next day, I was cleaning up after lunch when something strange caught my eye. I opened the cabinet under the sink to throw away some vegetable scraps, and there at the bottom of the trash can was a small red and white cardboard box. It wasn't from any food I'd bought, and I certainly hadn't seen it before. Curious, I picked it up. The label was in English, but the name meant nothing to me. something long and medical sounding ending in Zen. I turned the box over. No prescription sticker, no dosage instructions, just a warning. Keep out of reach of children. May cause severe drowsiness, confusion, or cardiac irregularities. A cold ripple crawled up my spine. I walked to my laptop, opened it with shaking fingers, and typed the drug's name into the search bar. At first, nothing alarming, just pharmacy listings and dense medical jargon. But when I clicked into one of the more technical databases and activated the auto-translate, my stomach twisted. It was a neuralgic, a powerful one, designed to sedate patients with extreme psychiatric conditions. Side effects: nausea, dizziness, spikes in blood pressure, loss of coordination, heart palpitations. Long-term use could lead to toxic buildup in the liver or even sudden cardiac arrest. I sat back breathless. This was no antidepressant, no over-the-counter sleep aid. This was a drug used to shut down the brain, and it had been in our trash. For a moment I tried to be rational. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe Nate had it prescribed for something he hadn't told me about. He was always stressed running that company, meeting deadlines, impressing investors. Maybe he was too proud to say he needed help. Still, it didn't explain the secrecy or the fact that the box was hidden in the kitchen trash beneath layers of food wrappers. And if it had been prescribed to him, why wasn't there a pharmacy label? Why was everything written in English with no trace of a local pharmacy or insurance code? I picked up my phone and dialed him. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice curt. "Emma, what is it?" "I'm in a meeting." "Sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to bother you. I just found something strange at home and wanted to ask what now." He snapped, and I heard papers rustling in the background. Did the espresso machine blink twice? Did the marble look sad today? No, I hesitated. I found a box in the trash. A medication. I looked it up. "It's serious stuff, Nate. Do you know anything about it?" There was a pause. Then he laughed. Short, sharp, mocking. "Are you seriously calling me in the middle of my day about garbage? What the hell, Emma? Are you that bored? I just thought maybe someone brought it into the house. A visitor, a contractor, or maybe you." "Oh my God," he cut me off. "You really are losing it. You know what? Why don't you take that paranoia and turn it into something useful? Get a facial, go shopping, or better yet, enroll in yoga and sweat the crazy out of your system." I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "It just seems strange. That's all." "You're strange," he said coldly. "You sit in that house all day doing what exactly? Stirring risotto and building conspiracy theories." "Jesus, Emma, grow up." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, the silence buzzing in my skull. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not this time, because something inside me was shifting. His words didn't just hurt, they confirmed something I had been too afraid to name. Someone wanted me sick. Someone wanted me quiet. And I was done pretending not to see it. The night of our anniversary arrived with unsettling stillness. The air outside was warm, humming with a quiet buzz of sprinklers and distant traffic, but inside the house it felt too still, like the calm before something breaks. I stood in front of the mirror for nearly an hour. The dress I chose was deep burgundy, soft as silk and clinging to me in all the ways Nate used to like. My hair was curled into soft waves, parted to the side, the way his mother once said made me look almost elegant. My makeup was flawless, done by a professional I had booked 2 days before, just in case. Red lips winged. Eyeliner, the kind of face that said, "I'm not the problem." When Nate walked through the door, he paused. I watched his eyes scan me slowly, curiously, like I was a painting he'd forgotten buying. "Wow," he said with a smirk. "You clean up nice." "Thanks," I said softly. "It's a special night, isn't it?" He blinked, then smiled again, this time more awkwardly. "Right. 3 years already. Damn. Not exactly romantic, but it was something." I walked toward him, leaned in, and kissed his cheek. He smelled like mint and leather and a faint trace of whiskey. His cologne never changed. He always said only cheap men switched brands. Dinner's ready, I said, gesturing toward the kitchen. The table was set with linen napkins, ivory candles, and a full spread of the meal I'd spent hours preparing. The halibut gleamed under soft overhead lights. The risotto was creamy, perfectly cooked, and in the center of it all stood a bottle of white wine, his favorite, aged 12 years, flown in from Sosa. Looks amazing, Nate said, walking over to inspect the wine. You've been busy. I smiled as sweetly as I could manage. Well, I'm a good wife. Or so I've been told. He chuckled, uncorked the bottle, and poured us both a glass. You've really stepped it up tonight. New stylist, new attitude. Maybe I just missed you, I said. Or maybe I wanted to remind you what I'm capable of. He raised his glass. Well, color me reminded as he turned his back to check on something in the cabinet. I excused myself from the room. I'll be right back, I said. Forgot the dessert plates. I didn't forget anything. I left because I had to give him a moment alone. I knew what he'd do. I needed him to do it. The camera I had hidden above the stove was small, nearly invisible, its lens larger than a peppercorn, but perfectly angled to catch the table. And Nate, 15 minutes later, I returned to find him seated, smiling, wineglass in hand. I poured for both of us, he said, gesturing to the 2 filled glasses. I nodded. Thank you. Try it. It's amazing. Might be the best vintage you've ever picked. I reached for the glass, hand steady, lips soft. To us, I whispered. We blinkered. I brought the glass to my mouth, took the tiniest sip, and smiled. The dinner passed like a scene from a movie. Nate was charming, suspiciously so. He complimented the food, asked about my day, told a story from his office that almost made me laugh. It was the most pleasant conversation we'd had in months. For a moment, I almost let myself believe him. Believe this version of him, but it was a lie. All of it. A performance meant to distract me, too. Soften the edges before he slipped the blade in deeper. After dinner, I stood up to clear the dishes, and that familiar wave of dizziness crashed down on me again. The room tilted. My knees buckled. Slightly. Whoa, Emma. Nate caught me, one hand at my elbow, the other at my back. You okay? Just lightheaded, I mumbled. Probably the wine or maybe the heat. I just need to lie down. He helped me to the couch, brought me a glass of water, even tucked a blanket over my legs. You sure you don't want a doctor? No, I whispered. You've done enough. He didn't hear me. Or maybe he did and just chose not to understand. At sunrise, I padded into the kitchen barefoot, my silk robe brushing the floor behind me like a ghost. Nate had already left for the office as usual. The house felt hollow without the sound of his footsteps or his cologne lingering in the hallway. For once I was grateful for the silence. I moved toward the upper cabinet, reached for the hidden camera I had planted 2 nights earlier, and cradled it in my palm like it might shatter. My heart thumped louder then. The quiet around me. Every bone in my body was vibrating. I carried the device to my laptop, plugged it in, and watched as the footage began to load. At first, there was nothing unusual. Just me and Nate at the table. Small talk, laughter. That felt too smooth, too rehearsed. Me excusing myself, him sipping his wine. But then there it was. Nate reached into the inside pocket of his blazer, pulled out a tiny packet barely the size of a sugar pouch. He glanced around, pointless, considering he was alone, and poured half the contents into my wineglass. The rest he sprinkled into my salad, then stirred it gently with the wooden spoon I'd left by the plate. My breath caught. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't some misguided experiment. It was precise, deliberate, calculated. I paused the video and leaned closer to the screen. The camera was grainy, but I could still see the logo on the packet. Red and white, the same brand I found in the trash. The same drug that could scramble a nervous system like eggs in a frying pan. I hit play again. I watched myself re-enter the frame, smiling, trusting, sitting across from a man I once called home. I watched him hand me the poison wine, and I watched myself drink it. My stomach turned. I reached instinctively for my abdomen as if the Poison was still inside me, as if it were still working its way through my blood. But I knew better now. I sat there frozen for what felt like hours. Not crying, not raging, just still like my soul had stopped moving, like time had been holding its breath with me. And then something inside me clicked. I didn't confront him. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to understand why. Why would a man like Nate, wealthy, respected, admired, try to eliminate his wife like a character from a bad murder novel? Was it the inheritance, the insurance, or something? Someone. For the next month, I played the part. I cooked. I smiled. I wore the jewelry he gave me and laughed at the dry little jokes he told. When he brought me tea or cocoa or fresh squeeze juice, I'd take a sip, just enough to fool him, and then pour the rest into the planter in the hallway when he wasn't looking. I kept count. 15 drinks, 7 bowls of soup, 3 desserts, all of them laced. The strangest part, the better I faked being sick, the more affectionate Nate became. He tucked me into bed, kissed my forehead, ordered flowers, white roses every morning. Without fail. He even sang to me once, whispered something soft in the dark. Like, I just want you to feel peace. Peace, as if I were already dead. I began to wonder if he was mourning me before I was gone. If in his twisted cinematic mind he thought he was doing me a favor, slowly slipping me away, petal by petal, until I disappeared. Completely. But I wasn't going anywhere. What he didn't know was that every bite I pretended to eat was evidence. Every camera angle, every packet, every soft-spoken lie was adding up. I documented everything. I had names, dates, dosages, footage, photos. I had a spreadsheet. All I needed now was leverage. I hadn't seen Madison Park in over a year. But when I texted her that I needed help, she replied in under 5 seconds. Name the place. I'm there. We met in a small Vietnamese cafe on the east side of Los Angeles, tucked behind a strip of thrift stores and boarded-up boutiques. No one we knew would ever come here. That was the point. She slid into the booth across from me, her dark hair pulled into a high knot, laptop bag slung across her shoulder, fingers already twitching like they knew code was about to happen. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask how work was. I simply opened my purse and placed the tiny red and white packet on the table between us. She stared at it, then at me. Emma, what is this? He's poisoning me, I said. My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. My husband. I have footage. She blinked once, then again. What the? I handed her the USB drive I'd prepared along with a slim folder of printouts and screenshots. Her fingers flew over her keyboard as she plugged it all in. Within minutes, she was watching the footage. Nate slipping powder into my wine, into my food over and over like it was just part of the meal prep. Jesus Christ, she breathed. This guy's textbook sociopath. No, he's worse, I said quietly. He's calculated. He knows exactly how much to give me. Just enough to keep me sick. Not enough to kill me. Not yet. She didn't respond. Just sat there watching the screen in disbelief. I could tell. When she hit the moment where I took the glass from his hand, smiled and sipped. That was the anniversary night. I said. The day he tried to toast to my slow death. Madison exhaled hard and closed the laptop. Okay, so what's the move? I want more. I said more than footage. I want to know if there's someone else involved. A reason, a motive. I need you to follow him. Follow him. You still freelancing Cuba investigations, right? You once found your ex's burner account using nothing but spottily playlists. She gave me a sideways grin. You remember that? I remember everything, especially the way you get when you're pissed off. Madison leaned back, cracked her knuckles. All right, Em. I'll track him. Give me a few days. Be careful, I said. He's charming. To the rest of the world, he's practically a prince. She scoffed. I eat tech bros like him for breakfast. True to her word, Madison delivered. 3 days later, we met again. Same booth. Different outfits. same lingering scent of fish sauce in the air. This time she dropped a folder on the table with a dull thud. Inside were printed photos, lots of them. Nate and a woman, tall, slender, voluptuous, dark curls, powder blue eyes, skin like porcelain, and wearing scrubs in some shots. In others, a designer trench coat, sunglasses perched high, her arm laced. Threw Nate like she'd always belonged there. She's a nurse, Madison said. Angela Rivera used to work in private wellness clinics, left under weird circumstances. Some quiet settlements. Word is she knows her way around medications off the record. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the image of my husband kissing another woman in the parking lot of a boutique hotel. 3 times a week, Madison added. Same time, same place. I slid the folder back into my purse. That was it. That was the why. I waited until the house was quiet, until the wine was poured, until he looked at me like I was something soft and breakable, the way you'd glance at a vase you were planning to knock off a shelf. That's when I placed the camera and the folder on the table between us. Nate's brow furrowed. What's this? I didn't answer. I just clicked play. He watched. His smirk faded. His shoulders stiffened. And when he saw himself, clear as day, slipping powder into my wine, his mouth parted slightly like air had been sucked from his lungs. I didn't blink. He reached for the folder next, flipped it open. His eyes scanned. The photos, him and Angela kissing in the hotel lot, her hand in his back pocket, her name linked to unregistered prescriptions. I watched his throat bob as he swallowed, and then I spoke. You have 2 options, I said, my voice low, calm, surgical. Sign the divorce papers. I prepared, or go to prison for attempted murder. He said nothing. Don't bother denying it, I added. I have everything. A video, timestamps, the powder, your fingerprints, her pharmacy records, and witnesses if I need them. His jaw clenched. You've been spying on me. I leaned forward. You've been poisoning me. A pause stretched between us like a chasm. Then he laughed, cold and sharp and venom-laced. Wow, he said, shaking his head. I guess you're not as stupid as you look. I smiled just a little. And you're not as smart as you think. His face hardened. You think you're walking away with everything. I'm walking away with my life, I said. You can keep your money, Nate. Your precious cars, your custom suits. I'm not here for any of it. I never was. His eyes darkened. You're bluffing. I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed copy of the divorce document signed, motorized, complete with a clause stating I wanted no share of his post-marriage assets. You'll notice I said, I'm not asking for a dime of yours. I'm only taking back what's mine. You ungrateful. He started, but I cut him off. You almost killed me, I whispered. Every day for a month you fed me poison with a smile. Don't you dare talk to me about gratitude. He stared at me for a long time, and then slowly he exhaled through his nose and sat back. Fine, he said. I'll sign your damn papers. I didn't thank him. I didn't flinch. I simply slid the pen across the table. He signed, and just like that it was done. But as I gathered my things, ready to walk away from the marble floors and designer fixtures, and the man who once told me I was the safest place he'd ever known, he said one last thing. You know I never wanted to marry you, right? I paused, hand on the doorknob. My parents forced me, he continued, voice like acid, said. You were good for my image. Poor little orphan girl with sad eyes. They wanted me to look human. I just wanted to look powerful. I didn't look back. I opened the door. But before I stepped outside, I whispered. Then I guess we both wore masks, didn't we? And I left. After I left Nate, I didn't go to a hotel or a friend's guest room. I went straight to the only person who might still know who I was before all this, or who I used to be. His name was Leon Brooks. We grew up in the same foster group home on the edge of the city back when our lives fit inside garbage bags, and every adult we met was either a savior or a threat. Leon was the kind of kid who memorized the names of every caseworker and knew how to tell which ones actually gave a damn. Now he was a police officer, a good one, the kind who still carried Pieces of his childhood like hidden shrapnel. Quiet, sharp, and buried deep. I called him from a payphone. I didn't want Nate or anyone tied to the Whitmore. Family tracking my phone. It's me, I said. A pause. Then Emma Collins. I exhaled. The one and only. Can we meet? He didn't ask why, just said, tell me. When and where? An hour later, we were sitting in a booth at a diner that smelled like old coffee and fried onions. I hadn't touched my tea. He hadn't taken his eyes off me. Tell me. What's going on? He said. So I did. Not everything. Not the poisoning, not yet, but just enough. I told him I needed help finding out who my parents really were. I told him I didn't remember much from before the crash. Just flashes, the smell of pine, a red scarf, someone singing to me in another language. He nodded slowly. You said the crash. What crash? The one that killed them. That's what the file said at the group home, that they died in a car accident. No living relatives. Leon leaned back, folding his arms. Emma Collins isn't your real name, is it? No, it was assigned to me when I entered the system. I was 3. I don't even remember my real name. He tapped his fingers against the table. You want me to dig? I want the truth, I whispered. No matter how ugly it is. He nodded once. Then give me 3 weeks. Exactly 21 days later, he called. Come to the station. Now. I didn't ask why. When I arrived, Leon was already waiting in his office. The door closed behind me, and the world got very quiet. He placed a file on the desk between us. It was thick, worn at the corners. Inside were photographs. Some old, some recent. Legal documents. Death certificates, bank transfers. Property titles. You ready? He asked. I nodded. Your name, your real name is Lanai Layover. The name felt foreign on my tongue, like trying to speak with someone his mouth. Your parents, he continued, Sana and Boris Layover, Russian-American immigrants. They owned a massive sports equipment company based out of Chicago. Multi-million-dollar contracts with Europe and Japan. Real power players. I never knew, I said. Softly. You were never supposed to, he replied. I looked at him. What do you mean? He let out a breath, leaned forward. The Sakharovs' business partners. The White Horse. Your ex-husband's family. They wanted the company badly, but your parents wouldn't sell. A few months later, your parents were killed in a car accident on the way home from LAX, except he flipped the photo. The brake line was tampered with. No proof, no charges, but the timing was convenient. Very. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, though I wasn't moving. Leon went on. The suitors handled the estate. Your guardianship was shuffled quietly through a series of lawyers. You were placed in a home, the Lara fortune, absorbed legally by the Whitmore Holdings. Their company exploded in growth the year after your parents died. I stared the name on the birth certificate. Lanai Layover. My name, the girl I was never allowed to be. They set me up, I whispered. From the beginning. The whole marriage, it was a contract to leash. Leon nodded grimly. They didn't just marry you into wealth. They married you to keep you silent. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat very still like a child again, trying to disappear into wallpaper. But inside something cracked wide open. My whole life I thought I'd been lucky to be chosen. But the truth was I'd been hunted. The morning after Leon told me the truth, I sat on a park bench just outside the courthouse, watching the sunrise pour gold over the city. I had a folder in my lap, a clean new identity. I was no longer Emma Collins, the orphan waitress who married into a lie. I was Lanai Layover, rightful heir to everything they tried to erase. I filed for legal restoration of my name that afternoon, and with it I took back my power. The first thing I did with the layover inheritance wasn't buy a yacht or move to Europe. I bought back the restaurant where I once waited tables for tips, so small I could barely afford a cab ride home. The same place where Nate's parents first saw me called me pure and decided I was the perfect face to cover up a bloodstained fortune. I became the owner, not as revenge, not at first, but to remind myself that no matter where they tried to bury me, I had grown anyway. The staff remembered me. Some of them had worked there for years. They stared, stunned as I walked, in wearing a tailored navy suit, and asked for the keys. The manager, who once scolded me for not refilling water glasses fast enough, now scrambled to bring me reports and coffee. I smiled, politely. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels. But remember, the floor opens at 9. Let's make sure everyone's on time." Running that restaurant didn't just give me back my footing. It gave me purpose. I renovated the kitchen, upgraded the menu, started mentoring young women who'd aged out of the system like I had. I told them, your past doesn't get to dictate your worth. And then one strange morning in early fall, I met him. His name was Alex Ramirez, a contractor, tall, soft-spoken, with calloused hands and tired eyes. He came to fix a plumbing issue in the back kitchen and brought along his son Ivan, a quiet, scrappy boy with a mop of blonde hair and mismatched shoelaces. While Alex worked, Ivan sat in the corner with a comic book and a granola bar, occasionally looking up at me like I was from another planet. I made him cocoa. He smiled and said, "Thank you." It was the kindest moment I'd had in weeks. Later, when Alex finished, he apologized for bringing his son. Said he had no one to leave him with. His ex, well, she was complicated. I nodded. So was mine. We laughed. It wasn't much, but it cracked something open. Weeks passed. Alex came back to do more repairs. One day, he invited me to dinner, not at some overpriced rooftop bar, but at a park with sandwiches and lemonade. Ivan came too. He handed me a flower he picked from someone's garden and called me Miss Lanai. I hadn't felt warmth like that in years. We dated, quietly then seriously, and months later we married in the restaurant I now owned. Under fairy lights, surrounded by people who didn't care about money or legacies or designer gowns, just love, just truth. And then came the ultrasound. Twins, 2 boys. I cried when I saw their hearts flutter on the screen. Not out of fear, not from trauma, but from the strange, holy peace that washed over me. I was safe. I was whole. And far away in a crumbling 2-bedroom condo on the edge of downtown. Nate Whitmore sat in a folding chair, watching dust gather on trophies that no longer mattered. After our divorce and the public scandal surrounding the Whitmore estate, the business deals dried up. Investors pulled out. Contracts vanished. His mother, Victoria, once draped in diamonds, was now pleading with banks to refinance what was left of their properties. The house was sold, the name ruined. I never filed charges, not because I forgave him, because losing me was already the harshest sentence he could serve. He would live the rest of his life knowing that the girl he tried to erase now owned the very world he tried to cage her in. I visited my parents' grave that spring. I brought white roses. I wore a simple dress. I knee beside their names and whispered, "I found the truth and I found love. I'm safe now." And then just as I stood to leave, a small hand tugged at my sleeve. "Ivan, are you talking to your mom and dad?" he asked. I nodded. "Can you tell them I said thank you?" I blinked, smiling through the tears. "Why, sweetheart," he looked up at me, all wonder and sincerity, "because they gave me you."